Hello and welcome to Rockstar Strategies for De-risking Your Software Supply Chain. Today's webinar is sponsored by Harness and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech and I'm excited to be your moderator for this timely event. Now, before we get to today's important content, we have 4 housekeeping items that are going to help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know there in the Q&A and we will provide further technical assistance. Now, second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to a link to learn more about Harness and continuous integration, as well as a link to download a solution brief on secure DevOps with Harness. So I encourage you to access those and the other resources in there now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, third, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section as well. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the link with the details there. Now, finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters. So to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. So after the event is over, we'll look at all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's get to today's fantastic content. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Sean Roth, who's Director of Solutions Marketing for DevSecOps at Harness. And we also have Chinmay Gaikwad, who's Director of Product Marketing for Harness CI. Chinmay and Sean, welcome. Thank you both for being here.
Hey, thanks so much for having us. Great to be here. And this is a really exciting topic. It's kind of a, one of those really super hot areas of focus, which is in many regards in its early stages in the industry. And we're going to get into some of the details there. And Chinmay and I are going to kind of lay out a picture of what the challenges are and go through some of the tools and frameworks and just general approaches that will put you in a much better position as you figure out ways to make your software supply chain more secure. So just a couple of quick intros. Chinmay, I'm gonna let you jump in and introduce yourself.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean. Super excited to be here. My name is Chinmay. I recently started at Harness about 3 months ago. Before Harness, I was in the application security industry and also worked on a lot of DevOps or DevTools companies. I'm a developer by training, and then I moved to product marketing pretty recently. And I'm excited to talk about how to secure your DevOps pipeline. And over to you, Sean.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I'm Sean Roth. I've been with Harness since August of 2023. Time really flies. I am focused on go-to-market for our STO and SSCA modules. These are focused on essentially shift-left security and software supply chain assurance. I think this is one of the most exciting areas to work on. It brings together security, DevOps, and of course, software developers who today essentially rule the world. So let's dive into our content. I'm going to just give a little context to light the way as to where we're going with our discussion here. So, most likely if you're not directly working on this, you've heard that, the term software supply chain and very much like a supply chain, with physical goods and in manufacturing, this is the sum total of essentially everything that contributes to the development and delivery of a software artifact. So you've got code, people, systems, and processes. And I think, it's no surprise that given the complexity and the distributed nature of developing modern applications today, through DevOps and all of the tools and platforms at play, this is a really tough problem to solve. You have so many different components that you have to consider, and they're all over the place. So, how ultimately do you make sense of this in a world where the supply chain, the software supply chain, is being increasingly targeted by attackers? And sort of one of the drivers of that is the fact that, today's code base is most of the vulnerabilities that are introduced into applications are through the use of open source components. So there's like this proliferation of open source components and third-party libraries. That's really hard to contend with, especially if you're using components that you don't necessarily have the right visibility into, and there has to be some level of trust as to the integrity of what you're building your software with. And so, it's no surprise that there are all these vulnerabilities throughout the software supply chain, and you obviously have to look just way beyond your actual code and its dependencies, to all the systems and people and so forth. And so, per Gartner's research, it predicts that by 2025, which is not too far off, that 45% of organizations will have experienced some kind of software supply chain attack. So the urgency is there, and we've seen it play out, at least in terms of some of the high-profile breaches that have occurred over the last several years. SolarWinds is probably one that everybody's really familiar with. This falls into the category of supply chain attacks where there was a compromise in the CI/CD tooling. So, the hack essentially was that malicious code was inserted into SolarWinds Orion system. That's a network management system that tens of thousands of users were using to manage IT resources. And so, through the download of an update, attackers essentially had a backdoor into all of these different systems. So, massive impact. You attack one part of the software supply chain, especially through some kind of dependency, and then there's basically a massive force multiplier. You look at all of the downstream users of that software who are at risk. Different type of approach, different attack vector, but xzutils, which is a command line tool for compressing and decompressing data. It's used in Linux and other Unix-like operating systems. So same thing. There was a contributor to this project that was found to have deliberately introduced some kind of backdoor into that. And so that was actually remediated before it made it to a stable Linux release, fortunately. But you see here, essentially two categories where, compromise in the CI and CD tooling and other compromises of open source dependencies. So this is kind of the mainstream now. Attackers know that there are these vulnerable spots within the supply chain, and that's what they're going after. So as I mentioned, this is a really complex problem to solve. And so, as the timeless engineering wisdom goes, if you want to solve a complex problem, start by breaking it into much smaller, more solvable problems. And that's kind of what we're going to get at in the subsequent sections here as we look at the different layers of the supply chain and offer some guidance there. So with that, Chinmay, I'm going to turn it over to you to take us through the first part of it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean. So these are the top 10 CI/CD security risks identified by OWASP that they recommend organizations should prioritize. As you can see, there are a variety of risks that are related to access management, third-party services, artifact integrity, etc. in this list. I won't go into the details for each risk, but the recent GitHub attack where attackers hijacked GitHub accounts with stolen cookies and then contributed malicious code via verified commits was done using a combination of these attacks, not just one. So it was a pretty sophisticated attack, and the attackers used a combination of these risks to gain access to those accounts. So with that context in mind, let's see how you can secure your CI/CD, which in this case includes source code management, building the app, and deploying it. The first and foremost requirement that we learned from our customers is having a platform that has necessary capabilities. So one might ask, why should the capabilities be in the platform? And that is because these capabilities are applicable across all three stages of software development, building, and deployment. So let's look into what are the necessary capabilities. From my experience, a secure platform has to have these 3 to 4 capabilities in addition to others. So this is not an exhaustive list by any means. Policy as code, RBAC, audit trails, and generative AI. Generative AI is table stakes these days. So a platform with generative AI can boost developer productivity and take care of a lot of manual tasks for your developers and DevOps teams. Each organization has a different policy map according to their use case. So using tools like OPA for policy enforcement is very effective in this case. OPA is very powerful when it comes to streamlining policy management and control access. And also it is very flexible. It's one of my favorite tools. So definitely should be a part of the platform core capabilities. Having RBAC, which is extremely granular, is critical to avoiding most of the OWASP top 10 issues. A good tip we have seen here is having a different type of account, a service account for third-party services and bots, so that you can give them different permissions to access different resources as compared to other stakeholders or actual people. And then finally, having a detailed record of all the changes helps with keeping a good hygiene for compliance and audit. And audit trails can definitely help with that. So as you can see, with a platform with good capabilities, we can take care of a lot of these risks. The assumption obviously here is that you have the right people and processes in place. Now let's look at how we can tackle the rest of the issues which are not tackled by the platform capabilities. Let's start with shift left security. Giving developers access to necessary tools so that security tools don't compromise their speed is very important. I have seen developers use super fast, secret, and open source scanning tools very effectively, which helps them catch a lot of security issues at source. And then you also have branch protection and approvals process. This basically helps set up guardrails for your developers so that they can be innovative and productive within those guardrails. A good thumb rule here is making sure that the security scanners are extremely fast, because we know developers hate waiting for results while they're coding, and that leads to lower adoption. So fast security scanners are critical here. When it comes to securing your build pipelines, you have a more comprehensive suite of SAST and SCA scanners integrated here. Generally, we have a bit of room in terms of speed because builds can take a little bit longer than developing code or writing code. So you can come up with a portfolio of SAST and SCA scanners that you prefer and integrate it during the build phase. If you're using a vendor's infrastructure for building artifacts, then you should make sure that you're securely connecting to the infrastructure, and the vendor has the appropriate measures to make sure that your artifacts are not compromised. Also, regardless of the infrastructure you use, making sure that you can easily achieve SALSA L3 compliance, which is the highest level of SALSA, is also crucial. I won't go into the details of SALSA here. Sean is going to cover it later in the session, but I just wanted to keep it here because it's very relevant to the build process. Finally, once you have the right and secure recipe to build pipelines, you should have the ability to templatize it so that any person creating a pipeline follows those best practices. again, just revisiting the point that I said, here you can integrate a comprehensive SaaS and SCA scanning tool that you prefer, or a suite of tools that you prefer, so that you get the coverage. Similar strategies can be applied to the deployment side of things as well. On the deployment side of things, you can integrate dash scanners at deploy time to catch all the runtime issues. Approval gates are pretty popular during deployment. Approval gates allow you to accept or reject a pipeline. You can also use no-gate CDs, depending on how hardened your overall security posture is. The template library allows our customers to codify and categorize their favorite HTTP requests, Bash and PowerShell scripts. For example, one of the use cases I've seen is using an HTTP webhook so that you can mark deployments as events under your favorite observability tool so that users are aware of the performance of deployments. And this is extremely powerful. So to summarize everything, it is extremely crucial to have a platform with all the required capabilities. And then security should start from left. So right from where the developers start coding to the build phase as well as to the deployment phase. So with that, I think out of 10, 9 issues are covered from these strategies itself. The one issue that is not covered is the artifact integrity violation. And Sean is going to cover that. So I'll hand it over to Sean.
All right. Thanks, Chinmay. Yeah, that was a good lead in. That's really kind of the focus. And, in this detailed slide, we're showing you conceptually just mapping out the software development lifecycle, where dependency threats come into play. And that's really, those of you that have been, working out your strategies to secure your software supply chains, this is sort of the immediate priority is, how do I control the use of open source components? How do I govern them through my pipeline? And also, how do I trust what it is that I'm using and ensure trust ensure integrity to my users? That's essentially the main problem that we talk to a lot of customers that they're trying to figure out. And so again, OWASP has its list of top 10 security risks as related to open source software, but really the securing dependencies that's a big priority. So that ultimately will come down to a couple of different frameworks at play here. We're going to talk about when you're evaluating trust and how to ensure software integrity, how ultimately do you trust a piece of software? You probably want to know things like who wrote the code, who built it, what components are in it. Just essentially, knowing where it comes from, having details about the source, the ingest, and some of the build parameters. So some of what we highly recommend, these are a list of imperatives, is that there's some record, a verifiable record about info that has information about the software supply chain itself. And then at different points in the software development lifecycle, you'd want to verify that. You want to verify some of these properties and their build. Again, the SALSA framework, which we're going to get into in more detail, the initial focus is really on the build stage. That's where that's essentially going to make the biggest impact to your security posture. And then, of course, you'd want to be able to attest the record and ensure that it's tamper-free. An attestation, if you want to think of it in maybe more relatable terms, would be having a notarized record that a particular artifact is tamper-free. So SALSA, this stands for Supply Chain Levels for Software Artifacts. And essentially, this is a set of industry standards and controls that prevent tampering and just ultimately improve the integrity based on build provenance. So again, focused right now on the build phase, and as the framework matures, it'll encompass things like source. So there are some interesting developments in the framework ongoing right now. But essentially, what we have, version 1.0, as it is, really features 3 levels. And so it stands to reason the higher the level, the stronger the guarantee of integrity. So at level 1, you simply have provenance that exists. Something is obviously better than nothing. Level 2 starts to associate identities and systems with the software. So that really kind of moves you into, like, there's authenticity there. And level 3, now this is the most stringent level. This requires 2-person review of all changes and a hermetic, reproducible build process for an artifact. So essentially, that your build process is fully isolated. It can't be affected in any way by another malicious build. And so, that's really kind of the standard to aim for. And this is something, again, focused on your build pipeline. But this idea of provenance, it's only useful if somebody's inspecting and verifying it. And as it stands, a provenance, which essentially is a set of metadata, which you can verify along the way. Another term that you're probably familiar with, and again, we talk to a lot of customers that are now looking at ways to generate and manage software bills of material. So that really serves to answer the question, what is in your artifact? And if you go back a couple of years, I believe it's 2021, Executive Order 14028. So this was drafted and issued by the White House for the intent of improving the nation's cybersecurity. So within that whole executive order is a mandate, and this affects especially federal organizations purchasing software, that there has to be a comprehensive list of components included in an artifact, including any third-party libraries or open source software components. So this is a mandate as part of that cybersecurity executive order. Even if your customers don't require an SBOM with the application or software that you sell, it's a critical application security tool on its own, and I'll get into some of the details around that. The software bill of materials is key to being able to govern open source software and remediating issues. Essentially, governance is enabled by visibility. So if you have a high level of detail and accuracy as to what is in a particular software artifact, that's a huge advantage. And the recommendation really is to use tools, or at least to have capabilities within your software delivery platform that enable you to generate an SBOM for a particular software artifact, and obviously to store that SBOM in some searchable manner so that you can use it. And then, Chinmay had mentioned this, the policy as code approach to governance. This is really where you want to be able to author policies at a high level of detail. In this case, you'd want to either allow only specific components to be used within your software pipelines, or you'd want to block components based on some criteria. For example, a name, maybe it's a specific version of that component, like Log4j. You'd want to block a range of versions of that component, Perl, and so forth. So you want to have that control. It's really essential. So if for example, you have some kind of component issue, or perhaps in the most serious case, there's some zero-day vulnerability that you catch wind of, and all of a sudden it's about a component that's compromised, and you want to understand where that component exists in your pipeline and in your environments, the SBOM is absolutely key to being able to trace those issues back to impacted components so that you can remediate it as fast as possible. So this is really just an indispensable tool. So putting it all together, again, just a kind of a conceptual map of the software development lifecycle. You would absolutely want to be able to adhere to the SALSA framework. If you're building a software artifact, you want to be able to generate and attest the provenance of that artifact. So adhering to SALSA level 3, and that's something that at Harness we support in Harness CI hosted builds, which is the generation and attestation of SALSA provenance level 3 here. And so you know that it was built on a secure platform, a secure pipeline. You'd want to be able to generate and attest a software bill of materials for a particular software artifact. And then you can enforce through policy as code based on the OPA standard in most cases. You want to be able to enforce the governance of open source software throughout your pipeline. And that gives you the ability to, any kind of serious issue, maybe it's some kind of license compliance issue or zero-day vulnerability, as I mentioned, gives you the ability to go back and remediate that very quickly. Because again, you have a map of where all the components that you use to build your software, where they are in your pipelines and environment. So, these are very powerful tools at play. So we're going to wrap things up here. We've tried to, compress all of these details down into some key takeaways. Chinmay, let me hand it off to you, and we can run through these 5 key takeaways here before we go to questions.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sean. The first key takeaway is consider all aspects of your software supply chain, and that starts from what platform are you using, what tools are you using during coding, building, and development phase. The second one is shift security left through SDLC. So security should not be an afterthought. Security should be actively integrated during development phase, and you should be using the right tools during the development phase. The third one is be able to verify and ensure trust in your software artifacts using SALSA. SALSA is the gold standard for verifying artifact integrity. So definitely make sure that you are doing that. The fourth one is SBOMs are essential for remediating zero-day vulnerabilities. And Sean went into details about why SBOMs are important. So definitely consider if you are generating SBOMs and how you can use those SBOMs to verify if you're compliant. And finally, govern with policy as code. I mentioned this before, and even Sean mentioned it. Use OPA or any other policy as code tool that you like, but definitely leverage that. With that, Scott, we can open it up for questions.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, great presentation, really interesting. And in fact, I've got just a couple of questions before we get into some of these questions from the audience. So I was wondering, which security scanners have you seen used most effectively during coding phase and during CI phase?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, during coding phase, the speed of security tools is very important because developers hate waiting. So I'd recommend using super fast tools, and some of the tools that I've seen developers use, the open source tools are Trufflehawk, for example, or Git leaks for secret detection. And then on the SaaS side of things, it's either SemGrep, and on the OSS side of things, it's OSV, which is again an open source tool. So these are the tools that I've seen used commonly.
Okay, excellent. And then, as far as SLSA, does that have 4 levels? So how is level 3 the highest? So how does that ranking work?
Yeah, Sean, do you want to take this?
For sure. At present, there are 3 levels. As I mentioned, like the basic SALSA level 1 is that yes, there is some provenance, and that doesn't necessarily give you the strongest guarantee that you've got an artifact or something has been tamper free. But as you work your way up to level 3, and again, there could be a level 4, but level 3 is the most stringent at the moment. And as I mentioned, being able to ensure integrity by way of, you've got a you've got a piece of software that was built on a trusted platform. You know exactly where it came from. You associate the individual and the system with that, and that is it's basically unforgeable, or at least beyond even just authentic. So provenance at the highest level will contain all of that information. And some build platforms, you can guarantee that it was built in a way that is more secure than, or at least the most secure way that you could possibly build that. So again, Salsa version 1.0 focused on the the build phase, but that's kind of where we're at. As I mentioned too, it'll be interesting to see how Salsa evolves, because now it's being, I believe there's work on applying it to source code repos, and looking at sort of the source phase. So hopefully it'll only, as a framework, only get more robust, such that as attacks become more frequent and more sophisticated, this is a means of, it doesn't necessarily prevent the creation of malware, but it sure as heck makes it harder for that, for a bad actor or some kind of malware to be built and deployed.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, thanks for that breakdown. I appreciate it. So getting into some of the audience questions here, we have one from Manish, who's asking, are there procedures in place for identifying and mitigating potential risks during development?
Yeah, the SAST and SCA and secret scanners are the ones. So I think technology is just like one part of it, but the people and processes is like a big part of adopting these tools. So I think having the mindset of we should be using secret SAST and SCA scanners during development phase is critical. And I think that right now I've seen a lot of organizations moving towards that model, where the speed of these scanners have improved quite a bit, and that helps in adoption. So I think having those scanners in place is definitely a big step forward.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for the question, Manish. Next question here comes from Jaideep, who's it's part comment, part question. Most people do not understand AI, such as deep learning, convolutional networks, for example, but everyone is jumping on AI. Are AI tools fully tested with guaranteed safety against hackers? And then many AI platforms are open source. Can they be fully trusted? Who guarantees the AI itself is reliable and not giving a hallucinatory sense of safety? So I guess any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are in this phase right now where AI is definitely in the hype cycle, so to say, but people don't know if we can trust AI or if it's hallucinating. I can only speak about harness side of things, where I've seen how things work. And what we do is we generally not only see AI as a development enabler or development assistant tool, but also AI, we try to integrate AI into different phases of software development lifecycle. And those are essentially tested out quite a bit. One of the use cases would essentially be if a build fails or if a deployment fails, then how can we use AI to find out the exact piece of log that is responsible for pointing out the failure. So in this case, hallucinations are still possible, but these are pretty low risk. And I think like building on these blocks and then targeting high profile use cases is the approach that we are taking. So we are trying to slowly integrate AI into all the SDLC phases. But I don't think like at least we are not ready to take a huge leap with AI in terms of replacing developers or something like that.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks. And the question here from Esley, who asks, what steps can organizations take to ensure license compliance with open source software?
Yeah, I can take that, and Sean, if you have anything additional, you can
Sure. Yeah,
contribute.
I can jump in and contribute, but go ahead.
Yeah, so the approach that I've seen with most organizations is using a supply chain scanning tool, which not only checks for the health of the package, but also checks for license compliance of that package. Those two things are tied together very closely. One additional thing that I've seen as a best practice for organizations is if the tool allows you to give permissions to either accept, comment, or block on a particular license compliance issue. Generally, if you have very strict policies on a specific license, let's say MIT based license, then you can block those issues. But if you are a little bit flexible on other type of issues, you can put it in the comment mode. And what it does is it comments in the developer's PR saying that, hey, this might violate our policies, so please look into it for additional details. So that's the approach that I've seen organizations take.
Yeah, again, I think, to add to what Chinmay was sharing is that, policy is code. Again, this is a powerful tool, coupled with, having detailed SBOMs. And say, for example, that there are certain components that, by virtue of the version, you want to avoid some license issue, then you can absolutely control the use of those throughout your pipeline by creating policies that block those components based on version or license. That's one aspect, and one practicality of ensuring that you're not out of compliance if it's a license compliance issue.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Esley, thanks for that question. Another question here. Which products does Harness offer which ensure CI, CD security?
I think if you you look at all the all the ways you would have to approach security throughout the software development lifecycle, I'll let Chimney speak to Harness CI and some of its inherent security features. But as a practice, you want to figure out better ways to institute shift left security. You'd want to look at Harness STO, which is security testing orchestration. That's a module that we offer, which allows you to run all kinds of different application security tests throughout your pipeline. It offers the kinds of workflows that would better enable security engineers assigned to that application and developers to really work together to detect and then rapidly remediate vulnerabilities. And then in the bigger picture, relevant to today's topic especially, is our software supply chain assurance module. And again, these steps, whether it's generating or verifying SALSA provenance, the creation of SBOMs, and all of the governance around that's fully integrated into our platform as well. And so that's the two modules that we currently offer, and that's how we approach security with respect to CI and CD.
Okay. Yeah. And Chinmay, did you want to? Did you have anything to add to that, or?
No, I think Sean covered it. So we have a code repository and continuous integration and a CD product, and all of them basically interact very closely with the software, the security testing orchestration product, and the supply chain assurance product. So everything is, the security products are very integrated in the throughout the SDLC.
Excellent. Okay, great. Well, that's probably a good place to leave it. Sean or Chinmay, if somebody wants to get started with Harness or find out more, any recommendations that you guys would give them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's obviously a wealth of information you can access at harness.io in resources. More interestingly, if you want to see what the Harness platform can offer you, um, based on the topic we've talked about today, you could absolutely sign up for a demo, and we'll put you in touch with our product and account teams to offer you that.
Okay. Excellent. Well, Chinmay, Sean, thanks a lot for putting together just a really informative presentation and for this Q&A discussion. It's been really informative. Really appreciate your time.
All right, thanks for attending, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Okay, and we have one more piece of business before we wrap up, and that is the winner of the Amazon gift card prize, and that is Christopher Rosser from Pennsylvania. So congratulations to Christopher. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Harness for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.